I feel like I've done a decent amount of complaining recently about 30 FPS on consoles, which may be a little strange for a PC gamer who hasn't had to worry about these things since the Cold War. But even though I don't personally have to deal with 30 FPS, I do my best to call these things out where I see them, partially because overpriced 30 FPS is the reason I switched to PC in the first place. But also because if we start destroying the console standards now, it's only a matter of time until the PC standards get dropped down as well, and personally, I would love it if that didn't happen. I also just find it amazing that there are so many people who are seemingly indifferent that they now are paying more than ever for performance standards that we were supposed to leave behind years ago, and you just recently paid for a machine that promised to leave those standards behind. But hey, that's just me, I guess. I'll keep sticking up for you guys, and I'll accept your apologies within the next 2 to 3 business years. Point is, I know I'm not the only one getting really tired of major game companies quietly reverting their standards of game performance to the Xbox One levels under the guise of resolution mode or quality mode or whatever nonsense label they want to put on it. In case you haven't picked up on my thesis statement yet, 30 FPS on the 9th gen consoles is a fucking scam, especially now that you're paying $70 for it. And it really shouldn't matter if they're giving you a shittier looking version of the game that runs at a higher frame rate as well, you know? Like, hey, we sold you these new consoles on the basis that you'd get great visuals and great frame rates, but we forgot to tell you that those two things aren't actually going to be coming at the same time. Also $70, please. And of course, this doesn't always apply, but the point I'm getting at is 60 FPS should be the standard for quality mode or resolution mode or whatever the stupid fucking shit they want to call it. But the performance mode should be 60 plus, not 60 target. Resolution mode should be 60 target, performance mode should be 60 plus. That's really the only way these consoles should be able to justify being called next gen. But really none of this matters to the people making the decisions because they know the game journos are going to play defense for them no matter what. I mean, it wasn't too long ago that the Gamer's editor-in-chief tried to tell us that the 30 FPS controversy for Redfall wasn't even real, but now it's makeuseof.com trying to tell us that we're just being too harsh on quality mode. I've responded to articles from this site before, and all of them have been terrible, but they're usually just completely uninformed or just wrong. This one is just kind of obnoxious. So strap in, because another journalist is about to tell you why low frame rates really aren't that big of a deal. If you own a PS5, you know that it's capable of so much. Many improvements were made to the console since the PS4. Games look and feel fantastic on the PS5. Many games give you a choice between looking great and feeling smooth. In PlayStation-specific terms, this is resolution mode versus performance mode. Although performance mode promises a smoother gameplay experience, there are some key reasons to choose resolution mode instead, because smooth gameplay and good graphics at the same time is apparently too much to ask for. I love this. Right out of the gate, you're just flat out excusing the worst part of console gaming, and the biggest lie that these companies sold you. You have to choose between smooth gameplay and good graphics on the most cutting edge of gaming hardware. It's such a joke, and yet there it is, presented as a simple trait of the hobby instead of the scam that it is. It's entirely possible to get smooth gameplay and good graphics at the same time. I think Demon's Souls is a really good example of that. But a lot of AAA games just don't want to give that to you because they can make more money by not giving it to you and just telling you that you're getting the cutting edge. What is the PS5's resolution mode? One of the greatest features of the PS5 is the ability for users to choose between performance mode and resolution mode for certain games. PS5 games played in performance mode favor a higher frame rate if there's one available, such as 120 FPS over 60 FPS. The PlayStation 5's resolution mode, on the other hand, favors current-gen graphics features like ray tracing and a higher resolution in exchange for a lower frame rate. I really don't know how journalists are keeping up with the lie that resolution mode is maintaining 60 FPS, because even at the time that this article was published, it wasn't true. Like, in case you missed it, this article is from May of 2022. But right here in this article, you say that performance mode gives you higher frame rates over 60 FPS, implying that 60 FPS was the target for resolution mode. But even at the time that you made this article, that wasn't even close to being true. There was already a laundry list of AAA games on the PS5 targeting 30 FPS for resolution mode. Horizon Forbidden West, Spider-Man Miles Morales, Ratchet & Clank, and just a week or two prior to this article's publishing, it was somehow supposed to be a big deal that some PS5 games were being bumped up to 40 FPS. Whoa, slow down there, Sony. And since this article was published, things have just gotten fucking worse. Like, it's pretty much the standard now that resolution mode targets 30 FPS, and a lot of times they can't even hold it. Jedi Survivor, Callisto Protocol, God of War Ragnarok, Hogwarts Legacy, all of these games launched on the PS5 with resolution modes or quality modes, either targeting 30 or 40 frames per second. And some games even have the balls to say unlocked 40 FPS on a first-party game, as if that's supposed to be even remotely impressive or remotely next-gen. Seriously, unlocked 40 FPS? How about locked 60 before you unlock 40? Like, fucking seriously? Shit, like even Street Fighter 6, which just came out, gets down to 30 FPS on the PS5. If you think this isn't an issue or it's going to get better with time, you are kidding yourself. It's only going to get worse if we're already struggling this much with it. And like, ultimately, if you don't care about frame rate, you don't care about frame rate. But you still paid for a machine that promised higher frame rates than what you got last generation. And fuck me if I don't think 30 or 40 FPS targets justify that. You were ripped off. End of story. If you favor one mode over the other, you can set your console to automatically enact a specific mode when a new game is downloaded and launched. Now let's dive into some reasons why you should give your PS5's resolution mode a try. Reason 1. Take advantage of your TV's 4K capability. Many new PS5 games and some remastered PS4 games are capable of displaying at a stunning 4K resolution. In a lot of instances, however, you have to sacrifice 4K resolution in resolution mode for a speedier frame rate in performance mode, which still amazes me that anyone is accepting this. Like, the Xbox One X and the PS4 Pro were excused for making compromises for 4K resolution because it was the first time consoles had it, which, like, fair enough, you know? But now that we're an entire generation forward from the PS4 and Xbox One X, we're still making compromises for 4K. And on top of that, a lot of the time you can't even get solid frame rates for 1440p, so like what was the point? And I know a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, it's still better than it was before, but that's really not the point. The point is that it's way worse than what you were sold on, and way worse than what you should be getting in the current year for how much money they're demanding for it. Why are they so eager to give you mediocre 4K instead of locking in a better 1440p or even a better 1080p experience? And why are so many console players so eager to defend this? I just don't get it. One of the first video games released on the PS5 was Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales. This game is a great example of the differences between resolution mode and performance mode, because when I'm playing a high-speed open world game with tons of particle effects and fast movement, I want to be experiencing it at 30 FPS. That is next-gen gaming right there. In resolution mode, you can play Spider-Man Miles Morales at 30 FPS, see stunning detail and native 4K resolution, and experience ray tracing, more on this later, which is awesome in Miles Morales, specifically because of all the reflective buildings. In performance mode, gameplay is smoother at 60 frames per second, but the resolution drops to 1440p, and you'll only experience toggled ray tracing. All in all, if you have a TV that supports a 4K resolution, you should be taking advantage of it. And look, that's all well and good, but at the same time, it's also the entire issue. In order to make the game prettier and take advantage of the visuals that you were sold on for this new console, you not only have to slice the frame rate in half, but you also have to play this quote next-gen game at the same target frame rate of most N64 games. Frankly, the conversation should just stop right there. This entire article is built upon you trying to justify a bad purchase, when it should be coming at this from the angle of discussing why Sony and Microsoft keep doing this and getting away with it. Remember, they wouldn't keep selling you 30 FPS if they didn't think you would buy it. They would have to make the new consoles stronger and more capable of 60 FPS if they thought you would only buy it if that were the case. The whole performance mode and resolution mode, it's just a mask for outdated hardware. Hardware that, by the way, they're gonna try and make you replace in a year or two anyways with the PS5 Pro or whatever the next stupid fucking Xbox is gonna be called, whatever the mid-cycle upgrade is gonna be called. And the cycle's just gonna keep going like this. At this rate, 60 FPS won't actually be the standard for console gaming until the next console generation. And at that point, mid-tier PC tech is going to be so hilariously ahead of it that no matter what they're charging for it, it's going to be an even bigger ripoff than these consoles were. I just don't understand why console companies are so eager to get 4K and ray tracing labels on their games, when I think most people would agree that frame rate is ultimately far more important. I'll happily sacrifice ray tracing and 4K resolution if it means a solid modern frame rate. Reason number 2, you might be used to 30 FPS anyways, because if you're already used to something, there's no reason for it to change, but also buy a new console. For the longest time, 30 FPS was the standard for video games on consoles. Apparently it still fucking is. It was exciting to see a game that supported 60 FPS and rare to see a game supporting 120 FPS. Full stop. 120 FPS was literally never possible on consoles until the most recent consoles. But you're wording this as if 120 FPS, 60 FPS, 30 FPS, like these were always the 3 options for console gaming. 2 of those were the options for console gaming. And frankly, if all 3 of those were always an option for console gaming, you're making your own argument worse. Because if 120 FPS is an option, if 60 FPS is an option, why the fuck would you ever be okay with 30? Moving on. Even though a 60 FPS game might feel a lot smoother, especially if you test it right after a 30 FPS, a video game at 30 frames per second isn't unplayable. It's what the majority of console users have been playing at for years. First of all, 60 FPS and 120 FPS have been commonplace on PC for over a decade. Like, commonplace. So, what are the consoles fucking waiting for? But second of all, are you really trying to argue that just because things were a certain way before, it's okay that they're not getting better? Because if that really is the route you're taking here, why did you buy a new piece of hardware? Better yet, why did they sell you a new piece of hardware? If nothing was going to change, legitimately, why did they sell it to you? And why did you buy it? You seem to think that this is an argument in favor of resolution mode, but really it's just a point against it. When you're already used to 30 FPS and get to pair that with beautiful 4K resolution and realistic ray tracing, it brings your video game experience to a whole new level of awesome. Oh my god, I hate this, it's so stupid. Reason number 3, experience the best graphics your PS5 can offer, because doing that at a decent frame rate is too much to ask for. With the release of the PS5 in 2020, there were 2 new features that people were most excited to try out: haptic feedback on the DualSense controllers and ray tracing. While haptic feedback is a pretty nifty feature, we're going to focus on ray tracing since it's a purely visual improvement of the PS5 that you can take advantage of in resolution mode almost exclusively, which again is the problem, and you're breezing right by it. If you're unfamiliar with what ray tracing is, it's a rendering method for graphics that uses algorithms to determine where light and shadows are supposed to hit in video games to make it look the most realistic. So when you're walking through a world within a video game and it's raining, you can accurately see reflections in puddles or a light poking through the treetops in a woody area, bouncing naturally off of surfaces. Because of how demanding ray tracing is, video games often require a lower frame rate in order to execute this higher level graphics feature. So if you want to experience ray tracing in your PS5 game, provided it supports ray tracing, you're likely going to have to play the game in resolution mode instead of performance mode. Ray tracing, 4K, they're all just buzzwords to distract you from talking about the game's garbage performance. Why do you think every new game is always so eager to tell you about its resolution and ray tracing capabilities instead of how the game actually runs? These publishers just want the most possible labels on things. They don't actually care about the moment-to-moment performance. So yeah, new games have a bunch of fancy new labels attached to them, but the ongoing lack of frames will remain an issue because people are too distracted to complain about it or actually put their money where their mouth is and not support garbage performance. I'm just saying, if people stopped paying for lackluster 4K and lackluster ray tracing, these companies would be forced to actually do better next time. So just switch to PC, get actual examples of the things that they're trying to sell you on console, and then if the next generation of consoles actually follows through on that innovation they promised, give them another shot. The article concludes, try out resolution mode for yourself. It's one thing to read about experiencing PS5 games in resolution mode, but it's another to actually test them out for yourself. Yeah, if you think it sounds bad, just wait till you try it yourself, it feels worse. If you have a TV that's capable of 4K and a high refresh rate, we encourage you to test out resolution mode on your PS5 games and even compare them to performance mode. Full stop. A high refresh rate is not going to change the frame rate, you fucking dunce. If the game is running at 30 FPS, it doesn't matter if your refresh rate is 120. You're still playing at 30 FPS. It literally has nothing to do with it. There are certainly pros and cons to both modes on the PS5, and really it comes down to what your personal preferences are. Do you want to see every visual detail and experience the latest graphics, or do you want gameplay that feels buttery smooth? It's up to you. This article is so painfully apologetic. I love how game journalists are literally incapable of talking about the issues that gamers have. Because if they did, it would compromise their position with companies causing the issues. Like, if you're an outlet, you can't criticize these companies and the things they're doing, because then they won't send you review copies or invite you to showcases, and ultimately that's more important to you than the fucking ad revenue that comes with integrity, because the ad revenue of integrity is lower than the sponsorship checks that comes from bootlicking. God, 30 FPS in the current year is a fucking scam, no matter how you dress it up. And that's really all I have to say about it. Toodles.